Welcome back to Where You Live with Gene and Tony. It's great to have you with us today. We're broadcasting from the Concierge Landscape Studios. We're brought to you this hour by Extreme Exteriors. Before we get into a conversation with Minneapolis City Council member Don Samuels on something that took place in December, folks, you probably read about it in the Star Tribune. There was a landlord there who owned over 16 properties, finally got to a point where the city council said, we've got to revoke all these licenses. A pretty drastic step to take. We talked to some people, Tony, right, that were advocates for landlord rights.
That's right. We spoke to Mr. Folger, who works with a landlord support group or a landlord advocacy group in the city of Minneapolis.
And we wanted to make sure that we get to the other side of the story, what's going on. So we're going to be talking to Council Member Don Samuels in just a moment. But before we do, I'd like to just tell our listeners here in the first hour, we've got a great resource for you. It's a bi-monthly newsletter called What's New. A lot of the topics that we cover in further detail in the newsletter. It's yours free for the asking. All you need to do is give us a call during the week at New Concepts at 952-922-2500. Ask for Courtney, and she'll make sure that you start receiving that subscription. It's a free one. You can receive it electronically or by mail. Your choice. Well, hey, without further ado, let's welcome to Where You Live with Gene and Tony, Minneapolis City Council member Don Samuels. Hello, Mr. Samuels.
Hi, Tony. Hi, Gene.
Hello.
Thank you for taking some time to be with us today.
Great to be here.
Yeah. Now, we looked at a story, Mr. Samuels, back in December, and I remember it was on the front pages, I think, of the Star Tribune that day. It was talking about a landlord in the city of Minneapolis who had, I believe, 16 properties, and the city council finally got to a point and they said, we need to revoke this person's licenses on all these properties. Yeah. We'd like you to tell our listeners a little bit about the background. What took place here? Why did it become necessary for this to take place?
Well, the landlord had acquired a large amount of properties in a very short period of time with no prior apparent experience. And by his own admission, got over his head. These houses are typically older homes, and they're 100-year-old, 80-year-old homes. They require a lot of maintenance. They were never built for rental. Mm-hmm. Single family for the most part type homes, and they're being rented sometimes by people who this is their first single family home situation. Sometimes coming from other cities where they lived in apartment buildings that were much more hardy. Mm-hmm. And when you combine the renter profiles often with the landlord profiles, the building profiles, it creates a kind of a triple threat of incompetency combined with high maintenance and
inexperience.
Yeah. And you had rotting.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this: how prevalent do you see this in the city of Minneapolis in terms of if you were to take a look at, for example, let me ask you this. Do you know what percent of housing stock is single-family rental property that we're talking about?
Well, I'm in the 5th Ward, Minneapolis. I'm not sure what it is citywide, but North Minneapolis is pretty much one single-family duplex community with a few fourplexes and very, very few high-rises, which are typically public housing. And so as the white flight occurred after the 60s and black middle-class flight shortly thereafter, and then the constant flight maybe it slowed after that, but it has been ongoing. The influx of the emptying out of those owner-occupied homes and the influx of investors replacing those, some blocks getting to the critical point of being mostly rental, and then that leads now to a higher possibility of having problem tenants on that block, and then more exodus because of that.
Yeah.
And it kind of is all a kind of a spiraling down impact that started in the 60s and continues in some neighborhoods today.
You know, Mr. Samuels, I understand exactly what you're talking about. My work is to manage single-family homes as rentals for the owners. And so I've been very aware of what's gone on in the city of Minneapolis and what's happened in other communities when people who are forced to make a tough decision, like, I can't afford this house anymore, or I have to move for whatever reason, and I can't sell it because the market stinks, so I'm going to rent it. So and it's exactly as you said. So you have an inexperienced landlord renting to people perhaps who have never had to maintain a house before or a yard, and then in the older housing stock, it's so much work, and it does require a lot of experience. So this is happening all over the place.
All over the north side, and you have a neighborhood like Jordan that's virtually half rental. And so then you can imagine on some blocks it's almost all rental.
Yeah, and not necessarily well managed. Now, in the article it talked about, in this case, with this particular landlord, it wasn't possible to put the properties in a court-ordered receivership. Is that something that maybe should be used more often, or maybe should have a broader application?
Boy, I tell you, it could be that could be a wholesale kind of outcome there, because the demand for that might become so high. You know, the market is supposed to kind of take care of itself, and the free enterprise system is supposed to work, but it doesn't work in communities like North Minneapolis, where the catalyst for change was not market conditions, but things like racial fear and America's ancient historic problems along race and class lines. So the market now becomes influenced not just by pure supply and demand, but by prejudices and
by cultural problems.
Well, let's take a look at this particular law that was, or ordinance that was used back in December. Can you tell our listeners, Mr. Samuels, how long has this law been in effect? It's basically, 3 strikes and you're out kind of policy when it comes to landlord owning rental property having problems?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say 3 strikes and you're out, but we did develop progressive discipline kind of system where we ramped up charges as you became unresponsive. Then costs were doubled each time, and so you could end up pretty much with your costs going up to $2,000 per infraction over a 2-year period of time. And in addition to that, we also began to look at the worst operators, and because we were finding that they were using up 80% of the resources of reg services.
So some of the same people were causing all of the costs?
Right. Yeah. And so then we're billing the good people.
We don't like that.
Right.
So basically, what we're talking about, someone gets a citation from the city, either because of a disorderly renter or because of
maintenance issues
that need to be done.
Code
violations. They need to have that taken care of. If and they're given so much time to take care of that. And then if this happens,
if they don't take care of it, they get $100 fine per charge, and if they don't within a month, it doubles, and if they don't within a month, it doubles, and if they don't, and that now begins to pay for that inspector rather than that inspector's cost being spread all around.
To everyone. So after so many of these violations and it's gone X number of months or years, then the license may be revoked by the city.
And if you get chronic enough, then you get put in our third tier of our three-tier system. And that's where all of the most problematic landlords dwell.
So a person after a couple instances might get to a point where a particular license is revoked, but that's just for one property.
Right.
That if they own other property, it's still available. Now, if they go through that a couple more times, then you look at revoking everybody's.
Right.
All the licenses.
So we're talking about a number of times that takes place before you get to that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You're pretty chronic people by the time you get to that point.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have to say, Councilman Samuels, that my experience with the city of Minneapolis and with every city in our metro area is that they really try to work with landlords, and they really give us a lot of leeway to get things right. I mean, I cannot complain about that at all.
I think that is true, and that's why we tried this progressive thing: is increase incremental charges, and then a three-tiered system. And then you have to, if you get more than one violation, then if you get two revocations, then we revoke all your licenses. So we're really putting the laser beam on the greatest creators of the problems, and are trying to relieve the good actors. The people in Tier 1, they only get an inspection every 8 years.
I like that system.
Excuse me, Mr. Samuels, we need to take a quick break. Can you hold over for one other segment with us?
Okay.
That would be great. Folks, we're talking to Minneapolis City Council member Don Samuels about rental housing in Minneapolis. We've got more questions for Mr. Samuels, but we will ask them after these messages.